Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our webinar. My name is Mary Collins, and I'm the Director of the Secretariat for the BC Healthy Living Alliance, and we're very pleased that you are joining us today. Our topic today is Let's Get Physical, Programs and Policies to Get British Columbia Moving. We hope that you're ready to hear from our guest speakers and also engage with us as we move through the program. And we have a really interesting program for you, which I'm going to tell you about shortly. But first of all, I'd just like to go over some housekeeping matters. Now, first of all, if you're having any trouble hearing me or our speakers, try turning up the volume on your phone or on your computer. And of course, we really want your input today. So we'll be asking you to use the control panel on the right-hand corner of your screen. There you can type in your questions for our speakers anytime as you think of them, and we will be having a question period after each speaker and a final round at the end of the three presentations. And we're also going to ask you to participate in some polls. We'll give you a heads up that the poll is coming, and you will see a blue screen that has multiple choice questions. Please respond to the polls. You'll have a few seconds to do so, and then we'll publish the results for everyone to see. And these polls provide us and the panelists and you with instant feedback, and they're kind of fun. Again, we really want to hear your questions and comments, so you can submit them at any time during the presentation or any issues you're having. Just type them into the question box on the right-hand side of your screen and indicate if there's someone in particular that you would like to respond to a question. We'll certainly try to answer as many questions as possible that we have time for, and if we miss any of them, we'll send them out in a post-event email with the missed questions and answers. And I just wanted to let everyone know that we are recording this session, and we will be posting it on the BCHLA website sometime in the next few days. And that website, of course, is www.bchealthyliving.ca. So that's kind of where we are. So let me tell you about our program. First of all, getting regular physical activity is one of the most important things that a person can do for their health, both their physical health and their mental health. In British Columbia, 60% of us are active, which means actually we lead the provinces, so that's good. But it still means that we're leaving far too many people at risk, both for chronic conditions like heart disease and type 2 diabetes, which are associated with sedentary lifestyles. 30 minutes a day is a good start for adults, but it's 60 minutes a day for children. And our stats are not quite so good for our youth. The 2009 Canadian Physical Activity Levels Among Youth, called CanPLAY study, found that 85% of British Columbia's children and youth aged 5 to 19 do not get enough physical activity. And I think it's interesting that we're doing this webinar while the Olympics are on, and I'm sure many of you, like me, have been watching it and all the discussion around sport and physical activity. So it's kind of appropriate that this morning we're going to be looking at new approaches to get children, youth, and families to discover the joy of being active. We will also look into what can be done at the policy level to build health-promoting environments and supporting conditions so that regular activity is an easy choice for all. Today, our webinar will explore what can be done to encourage physical activity at a community level and through good public policy. Hopefully, you will be inspired to take action on physical activity. So let me move now to our speakers. And our first speaker is Noelle Virtue, the MEND Regional Coordinator, and she will discuss MEND, which stands for Mind, Exercise, Nutrition, Do It, and how this family-based education program is helping children and their families get fitter, healthier, and happier. Our second set of speakers are an energetic duo from the Natural Leaders Initiative of the Child Nature Alliance, Emily McCutcheon and Sarah Walker. They will discuss their work engaging youth leaders to get children and youth outside and active. And our final speaker has been with BCHLA since our very beginning and was our first chair, Suzanne Allard-Strutt, who is the CEO of the BC Recreation and Parks Association, and she will explain the policy landscape for physical activity, what is happening now, and what needs to happen in the near future to get more people more active, more often. So that's the overview of the webinar. But before our first speaker gets started, we'd just like to start with a question about you. We'll put up this poll and post the results. By the way, if you see you fit into more than one category, just choose the one that's the best fit for why you're joining us today. So let's put up the question. 22. See where people are at. Oh, it's fairly evenly divided. Let's stop the poll. Great. So we have 30% work for government and 27% work for an agency or an NGO, and then a scattering of folks who work in other fields. So that's great. We've got a really good cross-section. Thank you. So now let me introduce our first speaker, Noelle Virtue. And some of you may know that Noelle actually worked with us here at BCHLA as our communications manager in 2010 and 2011. So we know that MEND is benefiting from her experience and expertise. She's currently working at the BC Recreation Parks Association and managing their new project, MEND. I mentioned Mind, Exercise, Nutrition, Do It. Between school, an abundance of screen time, and a busy family life, kids are spending less time being active. And as a result, many are above a healthy weight. In fact, over the past 25 years, rates of Canadian childhood overweight and obesity have doubled, so that they are now 1 in 4 children. And MEND is a program that empowers children and families to become fitter and healthier. This free program is fun and interactive and supports 7 to 13-year-old children and their families to adopt a healthy lifestyle. It's available in a number of BC communities through participating local community centers. So welcome, Noelle. Thank you for joining us, and tell us about how the program is rolling out in the British Columbia context. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Mary, and thank you so much for inviting me to present on MEND today. As you mentioned, this is a relatively new healthy living program to BC. So I'll start out by giving you a little bit of context and background to MEND. But before I do, I'd like to find out how many of you have heard about MEND. I think we have a poll. Great. So it looks like you'll be learning lots from me today. So next slide, please, Brenda. So MEND is part of a wider provincial initiative called the Childhood Healthy Weights Intervention Initiative that is funded by the Ministry of Health. It was officially launched in April of last year. This overall initiative is managed by the Childhood Obesity Foundation, or COF, and includes the following 3 components. So the introduction of MEND in BC, which is a community-based program that empowers families to adopt and maintain a healthy lifestyle. The expansion of Shapedown BC to all 5 health authorities, and Shapedown is a physician-referred, clinic-based behavioral weight management program. And the enhancement of BC's 811 telehealth services, such as dietitian services and the physical activity line, to increase the reach and capacity of these interventions. So at this stage, the overall initiative is in a demonstration program phase, and MEND is due to run until the end of December this year. As you can see, each of the initiative's components targets a different age range. And for MEND, we have 2 programs that we're running, one for 5 to 7-year-olds and one for 7 to 13-year-olds. For the purposes of this presentation, I'll be focusing mainly on the MEND 7 to 13 program, as we've only just introduced the MEND 5 to 7 program. Next slide, please. So a little bit of background on MEND and the evidence behind it. MEND was initially developed as a research trial at the University College London Institute of Child Health and the Great Ormond Street Hospital for Children in the UK, and it was created to make a positive impact on childhood obesity and the lives of families affected. So this slide shows the timeline in terms of the research behind MEND 7 to 13, a feasibility trial in 2003, a pilot trial in 2005, and a randomized control trial from 2005 to 2007. And the research has shown statistically significant improvements in many important health outcomes. So children have reduced their waist circumference, signifying a loss of body fat, and sustained this loss at 12 months post-program. Cardiovascular fitness has improved significantly, and many started to enjoy physical activity for the first time. And while these physical changes are clear and measurable, the emotional ones are less easy to quantify. Yet the changes have been heartwarming as the children start to see and feel the results of their involvement in the program. And children who were once shy are gaining confidence, making new friends, and believing in themselves. So MEND is running at the moment in the UK, the US, Australia, and in 3 provinces in Canada, Alberta, Saskatchewan, and now here in BC. So what is MEND all about? As Mary mentioned, we could click through. So it stands for Mind, Exercise, Nutrition, Do It. The Mind component aims to encourage children and families to adopt healthy attitudes about food and eating. And there are 8 Mind sessions designed to improve self-esteem and address behavior change. These sessions help families overcome difficulties in changing children's habits and behaviors around eating and exercise by utilizing tools such as goal and reward setting, modeling, and triggers. The exercise component helps to motivate children and their families to exercise on a regular basis, and there are 17 exercise sessions in total for an hour each. Physical activity sessions are designed specifically for the age and stage of the children and are non-competitive, and they're designed to be fun and improve balance, agility, and coordination so that after the program, the children are much more confident in their physical abilities. In BC, we've chosen only to offer the land-based activities, although we have had 1 or 2 sites offer swimming sessions where the staffing and facilities are available. The nutrition component empowers families to make informed food choices, and the sessions are based on the Canada Food Guide for healthy eating and are incredibly popular with the families. So the sessions include practical skills and techniques to equip parents and children to make healthy choices in the grocery store, when eating out, and when eating at home. And families learn about things like fats and sugars, portion sizes, how to read food labels, and then they get to put all of these into practice during a grocery store visit. The last component shows family how to do it in a fun, easy, and sustainable way. So Do It encompasses both the family motivation to actually make changes for themselves, while MEND continues to support them in maintaining their healthier lifestyles using the MEND World resources, which include a website, an online magazine, and families also receive a 3-month pass for the whole family to use at recreation facilities in their area. Next slide. Next slide, please. So what is MEND? It's important to note that MEND is not a diet. It's not a weight loss program or telling families what to do. It's a free, healthy living program where children and their families can have fun, meet new friends, and learn new things. Next slide. So who can attend MEND? The MEND 7 to 13 program is for children aged 7 to 13 who are above a healthy weight, so those children with a BMI above the 85th percentile. All children must attend with a parent or caregiver, and in many cases we see the whole family attend, so siblings as well. We've made exceptions to this criteria in some cases if we have children who are a mature 6-year-old or a less mature 14-year-old, or if the child is close to that 85th percentile for BMI and the parent is concerned about their current eating and physical activity habits. And for the MEND 5 to 7 program, we have the same criteria. However, we've opened it up a little bit to include children in that age range who are deemed at risk. So if they have a parent or older sibling who's overweight, or if they have high sedentary habits, low physical activity, or a poor diet. And in terms of recruiting and screening for the program, MEND is a self-referred program, so families do not need a physician referral. And each family goes through a verbal screening process with their local programmer to determine eligibility, readiness, and commitment to the program. Next slide. So what does MEND look like here in BC? The Childhood of BC Foundation is managing the overall program, and they work very closely with the Ministry of Health and MEND UK. There's a provincial manager who sits with COF and a lead operations manager with MEND UK who helps support our BC team. The two delivery partners for MEND are the BC Recreation and Parks Association and the YMCA of Greater Vancouver. And within each of these organizations sits a MEND regional coordinator, so that's me at BCRPA. And we work really closely with all of the partners to roll out MEND in BC and support each of the local sites and staff here in BC. Next slide, please. In terms of staffing at the local level, we have a programmer/theory leader. So in many instances, this is the same individual, and others, the role is split in two. And the programmer is responsible for managing the program overall at the local level, such as organizing the venue, recruiting and screening the families, liaising with the respective regional coordinator, depending on whether it's a municipal or YMCA site. The theory leader is responsible for leading the mind and nutrition sessions with the children and parents, and then facilitating a parent discussion afterwards. And the exercise leader leads the exercise session with the children, and the program assistant assists both the theory leader and exercise leader during the session. So in terms of the structure of the program, it runs for 10 weeks, and the families meet twice a week for 2 hours. Either 2 evenings a week or 1 evening and a weekend. The first hour is for both children and parents and alternates between the mind or behavior sessions and the nutrition sessions. And during the second hour, the children take part in a physical activity while their parents get an opportunity to further discuss what they've learned, troubleshoot difficulties they're having, and learn from each other. The MEND 5 to 7 program is structured slightly differently in that families meet for an hour and 45 minutes, and theory sessions are much shorter, so 25 minutes in length. There's also a 20-minute snack time during each session to help introduce children to different fruits and vegetables. And again, children get to spend an hour playing games in the gym while the parents get an opportunity to learn more about nutrition and behavior change and share their experiences with one another. Next slide, please. As I mentioned earlier, MEND was launched in April of last year, and the 5 initial sites were 1 in each health authority. There was Saanich, Langley, Kelowna, Prince George, and Vancouver. Each cycle we've run the program, we've increased the number of sites by 5, up to a total of 17 sites running 20 programs at any one time. And as you can see by the timeline, January has proven to be a difficult time for some of the sites in terms of recruitment. So we're looking at a target of between 12 and 15 participants per program. So it's 12 to 15 children. And we're currently running the MEND 7 to 13 program in 9 sites between January and March. And we've just started our first MEND 5 to 7 program in New Westminster this past weekend. While the initial demonstration period was due to finish at the end of June this year, we have been fortunate to have this extended through to the end of December. Next slide, please. This is the map just that shows you which sites are offering the MEND 7 to 13 program. We have Terrace, Prince George, and Quesnel in Northern Health, Campbell River, Nanaimo, and Saanich in Viha, Kamloops, Kelowna, and Nelson in Interior Health, Langley, Abbotsford, and Chilliwack in Fraser Health, and 3 sites in Vancouver for Vancouver Coastal Health. And on the upper right-hand side of the slide, you will see the 5 sites that will be running MEND 5 to 7. So we have New Westminster that's just started, Campbell River, Kelowna, Victoria, and Prince George are due to start in April. Next slide, please. Successes and challenges. So we've had a tremendous amount of interest from other communities wanting to offer MEND and incredible feedback from parents and children and staff about the program and changes the families are making. So I've included some quotes. The first is from a parent that was with the Vancouver Strathcona program. My daughter and I really enjoyed our time at MEND. The staff were so friendly, helpful, and informative. Even though I've studied a lot about nutrition in the past, I still learned so many things I didn't know. The best part for me was watching my daughter learn and becoming empowered to make positive, healthy choices all on her own. And the second quote is from one of our MEND leaders. The MEND program has been well received within our community. Once people understand that MEND is about positive lifestyle change for the entire family and that it is free, they get excited. The parents in our program are committed to improving the health of their children and themselves, and the parents love the information and educational tools that their children are getting. The children love the activities. The MEND program enables and motivates families to make healthier food choices, be more physically active, and ultimately improve their quality of life. So some other positive changes we've seen here in BC include families participating in community events such as the 10-kilometer walk, which they never would have thought possible before the program, and children becoming much more engaged in packing their lunches to ensure that they're filled with healthy options. And I think the biggest reward for these types of changes is the excitement that the children and the parents have when they're telling the MEND staff about these achievements that they're making. Our biggest challenge with running the program thus far, I think, has been recruitment of the families. And we believe this is due to a number of factors: a lack of awareness and understanding of what the program is about, as it's so new to BC. Reaching families that are ready to make these changes and commit to a program that's twice a week for 10 weeks is, after all, that's a big commitment for any family to make. And we've also had some difficulty getting the message to health professionals in certain communities where MEND is offered. That being said, we have had some sites that have really excelled with recruitment and retaining families on the program, and the longer we run it, the easier it's becoming to fill the programs. Next slide, please. So just in closing, I'd like to say that if you know any families that may benefit from this program, you can please refer them to the BC Healthy Kids website, which is up here on the slide, where they can find further information about the local programs, where they're running, and how to contact the staff. And I should also mention that in the next few weeks, the Childhood of BC Foundation will be releasing a public progress report on the overall initiative, where you can read more about the interim results of MEND here in BC. So thank you very much.
Great. Well, thank you, Noelle. That's a wonderful overview of the program, and we could certainly learn a lot of things from some of these families who've taken part. Now, I'd like to invite the audience to send us any questions that you may have for Noelle. And the first one we have from Andrea is, does the exercise component teach physical literacy?
Teach physical literacy? Yes. Yeah, if the actual curriculum is CATCH curriculum. I don't know if people are familiar with the CATCH curriculum out of the U.S. But yes, it does focus as well on physical literacy.
And I know that in the UK, certainly MEND was considered to be a success in its initial evaluation. How are the numbers shaping up here in BC, and what's been the response from Canadian parents? Now, perhaps that's going to be answered in the report that's coming out shortly, but is there anything you can tell us on that?
Yeah, I imagine some of that will be covered in the report that's coming out. But I can say, so I actually attend each of the BCRPA sites at least twice, and the feedback that I'm getting from the families who are participating is incredible. A lot of parents saying, I'm so happy that there's a program like this for my children and for our family, that they've been looking for something like this, and many people really very excited by the fact that it's a free program, so there isn't that additional barrier of cost for many of these families. So in terms of the families that have been engaged, we've had incredibly positive responses from, and we've also seen quite a bit of activity on some of the parent Facebook sites in some of these communities, which have had really positive feedback about the program as well. So great. Well, we have a number of questions here now. Rani would like to know, does the nutrition education include obtaining food and cooking skills? There is not a specific cooking skills component, no. However, for the 7-13 program, they have one of their sessions which is around the Fabulous Food Fest, and families are given recipes to try out and bring to the session and discuss and so on. But there's no direct food skills component to the program. And Danielle has asked, is there a plan to open up MEND to be inclusive, not exclusive just to families with children who are overweight? That's a good question, and one I think for the Ministry of Health, it's probably not something that I can answer. I can say that I know that for this demonstration program, the funding was earmarked for intervention rather than prevention, but I don't know what the future looks like. Right. Oh, good. How were the test sites chosen, Jackie has asked? Based on a number of criteria, so some of it was readiness to pick up a program really quickly. And in the initial stages, we had, I think, maybe 6 weeks to get the program up and running. It was also based on, so we wanted to have a good spread throughout each of the health authorities, and also based on population. So we had been told, advised by MEND, that having a population ideally over 15,000 within the community in order to be able to recruit those families. So many of these sites will have run 4 or 5 consecutive programs, so we need to ensure that the population and the demand is there.
Okay, well, 2 questions that are kind of related, if I might ask. Denise is asking, how do other communities get involved? And Danielle is asking, how can rural sites have access to MEND program? Is there a plan to address this barrier, as there are certainly many who could benefit from it?
Yeah, and I think these are some of the pieces that both the Ministry and the Childhood Obesity Foundation are looking at in terms of how is this program going to look moving forward after the end of this year. Sorry, what was the first question?
Well, how can other communities get involved? And then how can rural sites have access to MEND
probably
program?
The best way to, if you're interested in getting involved in the program is to contact myself, and I can certainly relay that interest onto the Childhood Obesity Foundation. We have had a lot of municipalities over the last 6 months to a year contacting us and saying we'd really like to get involved. At this point, for the demonstration program period, all the sites are picked, but that doesn't mean that after the demonstration program, if there's further funding available, that we can't open it up to other communities.
Right, right. And are the school districts aware of the program?
Yeah, so the recruiting is mainly done at the local level. There is, some work that's being done at the provincial level as well, but at the local level, schools are being contacted, the school districts. Many of them have very good relationships with the sites themselves and have been helping to distribute flyers to students, putting things in the newsletters. Some of them have even put up the program on their home pages. So yeah, the school districts are very involved, and that's probably our #1 recruitment avenue.
I think we're only going to have time for one more question, so some of the others will have to send you responses to them. But Lawrence has asked, sounds like a great program, but besides participant feedback, what other evaluation outcomes are you measuring?
There is a whole heap of pieces that are being evaluated for this program, and I think probably the best thing for Lawrence to do is to continue to watch the Childhood Obesity Foundation website and have a look at the progress report, because it'll all be mapped out within that interim report.
Great, and that's the website that you have on your last slide, and I think we'll get the other questions answered, but certainly if any of you would like more information, please get in touch with Noelle directly. And thank you, Noelle. Obviously, there's a lot of interest in the program. And
that's great.
Great. Yeah, good. Well, let us move on, and I'd like to introduce our next 2 speakers, Temily McCutcheon. Temily is in Victoria, British Columbia, and Sarah Walker. And Sarah is in Prince Edward County in Ontario, so thank you, Sarah, for joining us. And they're both coordinators of the Natural Leaders Alliance. And they will discuss how the Child Nature Alliance Natural Leaders Initiative engages youth leaders to get children and youth outside and active. The Natural Leaders Alliance is a growing alliance of young Canadians who are working together to give their peers opportunities to get outside and have fun. They recognize the importance of spending time outdoors and aim to reconnect all Canadian youth to nature by empowering a strong network of leaders across the country. That peer-to-peer connection is so important in motivating youth. So welcome, Temily and Sarah. We're really looking forward to hearing about your work.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Mary, for the introduction, and to all of you on the phone for joining us this morning. As mentioned, both myself and Sarah will be presenting on the Natural Leaders Alliance. We might shorthand it to NLA as we go on to the presentation, just so you keep that in mind. And what we're doing to ensure that all young Canadians have the opportunity to love, lead, and explore in nature. So between the two of us, we'll first give you the rundown about who we are and what we're doing as an organization. And then we'll share some project examples and chat about how you can be involved with the Natural Leaders Alliance if you are as stoked on outdoor play as we are. But to get us started and see what kind of audience we have, it's a little bit hard considering we can't see your faces. We thought we'd start off with a pretty fun polling question, pardon me. So it's up there on the screen right now for all of you to answer and get going on this Wednesday morning. Oh, nice. Cool. All right. So it seems like quite a few people are into hiking through old growth forests, which I can definitely relate to. And it's cool that we've got a few other snow angels and paddlers out there. So we'll just keep moving forward. And as Mary mentioned, the Natural Leaders Alliance connects all Canadian youth to nature by empowering and supporting a strong network of leaders across the country that inspire positive social change. So this journey began in 2009, actually, at the Get Outside, It's in Our Nature Forum in Victoria, BC. And that was when the Child and Nature Alliance of Canada, which Sarah will talk about a little bit more later on, launched as a society with a strong commitment to ensure authentic youth engagement in every aspect of the organization's work. So since that inaugural event, the NLA has developed into a 4-youth by youth program that focuses on youth-led outdoor community events, leadership development, awareness campaigns, and longer-lasting nature programs as well. And through the combined success of various projects and events, the Natural Leaders Alliance has provided youth from across the country with the opportunity to explore many of our awesome natural surroundings. But we've only actually just begun this adventure, and we need more of our peers to share the steering wheel with us. Only then can we, as a dynamic team of natural leaders, lead all young Canadians to experience the great nature we have in this big backyard of ours. So as we're leading into 2014, we have identified 4 main goals to focus on, and they're up there on the screen right now. The first is to build a Canadian identity in the movement to reconnect youth to nature. The second is to nationalize a youth corps of natural leaders, which you'll hear about later on. And the third is to inspire and support youth to enjoy nature as they know it. And the fourth, to provide youth with meaningful resources and leadership training. So whether you're a teacher, a student, or a curious soul, the varying levels of experience each natural leader brings to the table is what we thrive on, and what will actually eventually lead us to accomplish these 4 goals. As youth find ways to strengthen the bond between Canadians and the outdoors, the NLA is a space for them to explore new paths, support their peers, and develop their leadership skills.
Thanks, Emily. Kind of what I want to get into now is kind of the story of how we ended up here and where the Natural Leaders Alliance has come from. And the NLA was founded on the belief that the child and nature movement is the answer to a troubling societal problem. And this problem is defined by the fact that children between the ages of 8 and 18 spend approximately 6.5 hours in front of a screen every day. And this means that 63% of a child's free time outside of school is spent sitting still. And this fact becomes more terrifying when we realize that childhood obesity has increased 360% since 1976. And the incidence rates of child mental illness and psychopathology have skyrocketed. But why do we think that this societal crisis and a connection with nature are related? Well, here's where the really good stuff comes in. Research shows that time spent in nature reduces mental health symptoms and increases overall quality of mental well-being. It shows that access to nature increases opportunity for exercise and enhanced physical health. And that in terms of sustainability and appreciating our society's dependence on the natural world, we value and protect what we know and participate in, not just what we have an academic understanding of. And lastly, a connection to the natural world is fundamental to all aspects of child development and a key component to building optimal mental, emotional, social, and physical health. Now, before I get into any more detail about the current state of the Natural Leaders Alliance, I'd like to give a brief history on where the child and nature movement originated. In 2005, a concerned journalist named Richard Louv wrote the book Last Child in the Woods. He expressed his concern for this generation's lack of a nature connection and coined the term nature deficit disorder. This bestseller sparked a movement which translated into the Child in Nature Network, an American umbrella organization that helps grassroots organizations connect with each other and find the resources to provide an opportunity for every child to get outside. One of CNN's projects is their Natural Leaders Network, and that's a network that facilitates natural leadership from youth both nationally and internationally. For the last 2 years, several Canadians have been given the opportunity to attend the Natural Leaders Network's Legacy Camp, which is a 4-day gathering of youth leaders to help strengthen their leadership, facilitation, and organization skills. And so shortly after the formation of the Child in Nature Network, so the American organization, a Canadian organization was formed. And that organization is called the Child in Nature Alliance of Canada. And similarly, as we also to the Child in Nature Network, we also have a youth engagement strategy, and that is our Natural Leaders Alliance, what we're talking to you about today. So Temalia and I are both board members of the Child in Nature Alliance, and we champion our youth engagement by coordinating the NLA. As of current initiatives, kind of where the NLA is located now and what we're hoping to do in the future, we've got 3 major initiatives that we're currently working on, and the first is our core team. And so our core team is made up of 9 individuals, and you can see their lovely pictures across the bottom of the screen. From all across the country and varying in ages and backgrounds. A few of us were lucky enough to meet this year's American Legacy Camp in Bainbridge Island in Washington, and got to meet each other, and that's kind of solidified this idea of a core team. And then we've added a few more members, and we're currently solidifying our goals, vision, and strategic plan for the future before we reach out to others. Our second initiative that we'll be looking at is our toolbox. And the toolbox is a PDF document that we will be starting a guide for individuals that are interested in joining the Natural Leaders organization, or for organizations that are interested in collaborating with us. We're very close to having this ready for public use, and we can't wait to share it with our network. So please keep an eye out for it. It should be coming out very shortly.
And along with these current initiatives that we're working on, we also have a few future initiatives that we're hoping to roll out this year. So the first one is the Natural Leaders Training Summit, and we're currently raising funds to host our first ever summit in the Palisades at Jasper National Park later this summer. This is going to be a 4-day training opportunity that will bring the Natural Leaders core members, so those 9 on the bottom of the screen there, plus a few more, bring them face-to-face to develop their skills and strategies for connecting their peers, communities, and all young Canadians to nature. So that's a really exciting opportunity that hopefully with funding we'll be able to get going and off the ground. And the second initiative that we're currently working on is the regional hubs. So with natural leaders all across Canada, hubs will be a fun way for all of us to directly connect with and support our local communities to get outside. So by creating a regional hub, natural leaders will provide a space for youth to share knowledge, collaborate on trip ideas, plan grassroots projects, and just have fun. And our goal is to have natural leader hubs in every province and territory, actually, in the coming years.
The next thing we're just going to go through quickly are some examples of our grassroots projects. So a lot of our current natural leaders have personal projects that they're working on behalf of the Natural Leaders Alliance. And so what I'm going to quickly talk about are some outdoor education days I've been planning with the local school board. And so I've been working with a local school board in Kingston, Ontario, and I work with the board's outdoor education special assignment teacher, and I help design day-long programs at several outdoor education centers for different classrooms and schools, and I make sure that these programs match up with the teacher's lessons plans. So we focus these days around leadership and then involve activities to match up with history, geography, or the science curriculums of each grade. So a few examples of activities, we do everything from snowshoeing to longhouse building. We did some campfire building, teamwork. We've explored Aboriginal spirituality. We've done several activities that match up with whatever the teacher's working on at that current time. So it gives the kids access to connecting with nature, but also building their leadership skills and also learning whatever the school has decided should be in that curriculum.
And another one of our project examples is a Natural Leaders Club that was formed in one of Victoria's middle schools. It was funded by the North Face Explorer Fund, and it occurred last May. And it had 12 student leaders in grades 6 to 8. And the group was led by myself and another co-member at the time. And we met every week for 10 weeks and took local outdoor excursions, explored the importance of outdoor play, and planned and successfully hosted a school-wide amazing race to get their peers outside, which was quite exciting because it was the first time that many of these young kids had ever hosted and successfully held a really great event that got all of their friends outside. So that was a really rewarding experience. And as a celebration, we all went on a kayaking adventure, which you can actually see on the photos there, up the Gorge Waterway at the end of the 10 weeks. So besides, these physical and hands-on activities, we also have a few other projects that we work on that are a little bit more virtual. So one example of these projects that we run under the NLA is the Got Parks web portal, which is the Get Out to Parks web portal. And it's currently coordinated by one of our core members, actually, with 15 other youth volunteers from across the country. And Got Parks is an initiative of the Canadian Parks Council that was designed to provide an online destination for youth to learn about our national, provincial, and territorial parks, and also to learn about job and volunteer opportunities and park programs, as well as to share photos and stories of our own experiences in parks. So it's quite a unique website, and hopefully something that we'll be able to, get more kids outside and be able to plan a career outside as well. So we have one polling question here, which we would love you to all join in on, and it's how can you help improve the Got Parks community? And so you can just choose any one of those options there. How you think you might be able to help us out in the Got Parks community if you are so inclined. Awesome. So a pretty good mixture there. And if you are interested in learning a bit more about Got Parks, you can just go to gotparks.ca and you'll see a little bit more about what it's all about. But then again, that's just another one of our side projects to let you know about. And please connect with us if you're serious about any of those options you just chose. We would absolutely love to hear from you. So not only are these initiatives inspiring outdoor play, but they're also providing a space for young Canadians to reach their full potential as confident and capable natural leaders, which is our end goal. All right, so the combination of these local community initiatives and natural leadership training and relationship building is how we, as the Natural Leaders Alliance, are working towards a happy and healthy Canada. So how can you help in our mission to connect all Canadian youth to nature? Well, here are a few ways. The first is to foster youth in your community as leaders, both personally and through your place of work. Supporting and encouraging local youth to achieve their goals in a way that works for them is really empowering and something that makes a large difference. The second is to connect and collaborate with a local natural leader. Join forces and connect with a natural leader in your community. We love working with other organizations and believe that the only way forward is by working together. And so you can get in contact with us, or maybe you just have an idea of who would be a really strong leader in your community, or maybe someone who has potential but hasn't really reached it yet. Connect with them, let them know about the organization, and we'd love to make it happen. And the third is to keep an eye out for our toolbox. It will be an incredible and valuable resource for youth at any stage of their leadership, and we'll send it to you all if you want when it's completed in the coming months. So thanks again for listening this morning, and we hope to hear any comments, questions, or ideas from you soon. As a volunteer-based organization, we appreciate all feedback so that we can be an efficient and effective in our efforts to connect all young Canadians to nature and to encourage a happy and healthy lifestyle. So thank you all, and we're looking forward to hearing some questions from you.
Great. Well, thank you, Tamale and Sarah. It's just so exciting to hear your enthusiasm and what you're doing in the development of leaders, physical activity, and good health. And certainly your programs are being developed by youth, for youth, and are really developing leadership skills. That's something here at BC Healthy Living Alliance we learned when we were doing our projects like Quitters Unite, that the youth, themselves are really best positioned how to understand and motivate their peers, and you're a wonderful example of what's being done, so thank you. And I'd just like to ask the audience now to send us any questions. And the first one is, how are you connected to First Nations communities?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. And you know what? To be completely honest, at this point in the game, we're not very connected at all. So if you have any way that we can be, we would love to hear from you. Because as we've been saying, we want to connect all Canadians, and that of course includes First Nations. So if you have any tips or pointers as we get moving this year, we'd love to hear from them.
Right, and Andrew actually then is also asking whether you're connected with the BC Camping Association, because they might be a great place to connect to during the school year.
Cool. No, we haven't. We're not actually. There's so many wonderful organizations, it's hard to keep tabs on them, but the BC Camping Organization?
Yeah, right. Well, Andrew, maybe you can send an email to Emily or Sarah and get them in touch. And Liz was wondering where your funding comes from.
Actually, our funding comes from a multitude of sources, but we're based with the Child and Nature Alliance of Canada, so that funding comes largely through grants and personal donations. So it's always a continuous fight to find a grant to launch one of our initiatives, and something that we're continuously working on, but it largely comes from the Child and Nature Alliance.
Right. So like so many other volunteer groups, it's a struggle, but you're doing
Yes.
such a great
Yes.
job. Yeah. And then are the core team members that you talked to about, are they from right across Canada?
Right now we have a very large participation in BC and Ontario. So we're hoping to make sure that all of our future members represent more of the Northern Territories and as well as out east, because that's something that we're lacking in right now. But that is our end goal. And Temily talked about our summit previously, and that is our end goal, is to make sure that summit there is a representative from every area across the country.
Okay. And actually we've heard back both from Andrea with some contact information around First Nations and from Andrew around camping organizations, so we'll make sure we send those to you. But Lizzie was wondering if you're working in partnership with any health charities.
With any health charities, sorry? At the moment, no, we are not.
Okay, well, maybe there's an opportunity.
Yeah,
And
so many great
Jackie was wondering, for municipalities who are interested in becoming involved, how best to start the process?
I think at this point, because the next few months, we're really working hard on defining our goals and recruiting folks. Probably by the end of the summer, we'll be able to start approaching municipalities with a bit more structure and be able to be a little more effective in our actions. So perhaps just keep an eye out for us, and we'll be able to yeah, connect and engage once we're yeah, I guess a little more prepared to make sure we're being an effective organization in municipalities.
Yeah. Well, obviously you raised the interest of so many of those who are online with us this morning, because there's just all kinds of suggestions about where my partner. So you created a real buzz here. We can't get through them all.
That's what we'd like to hear.
Right. Oh, here's one though. Lawrence wants to know, what are the gender ratios for leaders and participants?
That is something we're also currently struggling. We do, out of our 9 right now, 1 individual is male with the rest being female.
Right.
So that's something I think we'd like to see, is to get those gender ratios to be more even. And something to think of is, if you are listening right now, something I want you to keep in mind is think about youth in your life that you think would have a good fit with the Natural Leaders Alliance or have a good fit as a leader in this movement. And those are the type of people we're looking for. So if you have somebody in mind, yes, we're not totally ready to expand in great numbers across Canada right now, but we will be soon. So please connect those individuals with us if you can think of anybody off the top of your head.
And I guess it would be helpful, Danielle has also asked, what is your the MLA age range for youth?
Yeah, so technically we've put it as 16 to 29, but honestly, it's in anyone. You can be younger than 16, of course. if you're really interested and involved in being a leader in your community.
Great. Well, I think that's all the time we have for questions. We'll come back at the end again, but again, just obviously you created a real interest, and thank you for the great work that you're doing, because we know it's so important. So Temily and Sarah, we'll be back to you in a short little while, but now I'd like to introduce our final presenter, Suzanne Allard-Strutt. And as I mentioned at the beginning, Suzanne is the CEO of the BC Recreation and Parks Association. She was also the founding chair of the BC Healthy Living Alliance and has been a long-time proponent of the need to update and maintain BC's recreation facilities and other community-level supportive environments for physical activity. She's led the BCRPA's recommendations on the policy levers that can support healthy living, including access, overcoming barriers to participation, and ensuring that the recreation voice is a strong voice for active living and health promotion. And in addition to her day job as the CEO of BCRPA, Suzanne also currently serves on the executive of the National Fitness Leadership Alliance, our BC Healthy Living Alliance, the Healthy Built Environment Alliance of BC, the Seniors Healthy Living Advisory Network of the provincial government, and as the BC representative of the National Recreation Agenda Working Group. So throughout this involvement and all the connections that she has and she makes, Suzanne has spearheaded the development of many initiatives and strategies promoting healthy eating, active lifestyles, recreation, and culture. So we're just delighted to have you with us again, Suzanne, and welcome, and please proceed. Suzanne?
Yes, I'm waiting. Okay, there we go.
Yeah. I think we're up.
There's a little audio file that's supposed to be playing right now.
It did play.
Okay, didn't hear it. So we'll move. Did you hear it?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, good. We'll move on to the first slide. Thank you very much, Mary, and good morning, everyone. So these are the topics that I will cover in my presentation. We'll talk a little bit about the policy environment nationally and locally. And I will bring up some considerations for increasing physical activity levels, and will identify some priorities for the future. So this framework, the framework for recreation in Canada, is designed to guide and stimulate effective, coordinated policies and practices. So it provides a new vision for recreation, which is to have everyone engaged in recreation experiences that foster the well-being of individuals, communities, and environments. Discussions at and since the National Recreation Summit in 2011 have resonated with two key messages. One, that high-quality, accessible recreation opportunities are integral to a well-functioning society. And secondly, that the public recreation sector is a leader in addressing major issues of the day in community settings. So as I will illustrate, providing built and natural environments that support physical activity is critical to achieve these objectives. So public recreation is a key delivery agent for sport, and it provides a variety of supports to local sports organizations. These include access to facilities, early skill development and exposure programs, ongoing sport play, coordination and communication, enhanced coaching capacity, allocation policies and subsidies, joint use agreements, sport hosting, and sport tourism. So a pretty healthy involvement, I'll say. And all of these elements support physical activity at the community level. Similarly, the promotion of active, healthy lifestyles is a key priority for recreation, and this would include the provision of physical activity programs for all age groups, ranging from active play for preschool children to teen and adult fitness classes to engaging older adults in ongoing activity. Many municipalities have worked with partners in public health and sport and education to develop comprehensive community plans for active living. So these plans include awareness campaigns, program opportunities and events, initiatives aimed specifically at inactive and vulnerable populations, and the development of supportive indoor and outdoor environments. And I must add that a lot of this work has also been supported by the BC Healthy Living Alliance and the provincial government with the funding that was given for the development and implementation in recent years of a provincial physical activity strategy. So local governments, we've said, are the primary owners and operators of the indoor and outdoor sport and recreation infrastructure in Canada. They provide fitness centers, indoor and outdoor pools, water parks, sport fields, courts, ball diamonds, and a variety of other amenities that support active choices. And of course, there's also parks and playgrounds and trails. So recreation plays a key role in the design and provision of active transportation corridors, such as pathways and bikeways that encourage active lifestyles. Now, to speak a little bit about Active Canada 2020, it's a physical activity strategy and change agenda. So this is the vision of Active Canada 2020. A physically active lifestyle helps define Canada and strengthens the health and social fabric of our country. Now, if you look at the middle level on this diagram, you'll see that there are 4 areas of focus to achieve this vision: community design, targeted information and public education, policy development, and high-quality, accessible programs and services. At a national gathering in New Brunswick in May 2013, Active Canada 2020 established 4 action groups: active transportation, accessibility and diversity, schools, and active play. Meanwhile, in BC, the Ministry of Health released Promote, Protect, Prevent, Our Health Begins Here, BC's guiding framework for public health. So this framework sets out a path to identify and set in motion key public health goals and priorities over the next 10 years. The development and implementation of a provincial physical activity strategy and action plan was identified as a public health priority within this framework. So the BC Physical Activity Strategy and Action Plan, in fact, will be based on the framework for physical activity in Western Australia. And the outcomes of the Australian framework include a stronger public policy, the provision of appropriate environments and programs, an increase in public motivation and understanding, and the promotion of partnerships. And we've heard from the 2 previous presentations this morning how key partnerships and collaborations are. So the BC Physical Activity Strategy will also overlay Active Canada 2020. And there's a physical activity leadership table which is supporting the development of the strategy. And that table has representation from a broad range of stakeholders who work on the issue of physical activity in the province. It's expected that the strategy will be released in the fall of 2014. So in partnership with Participation and the Physical Activity Leadership Table I just mentioned, the Ministry of Health has conducted a scan to identify existing physical activity programs in BC. And it organized the information along the same action areas of Active Canada 2020, that is by community design, targeted information and public education, policy development change and implementation, and high-quality, accessible programs and services. So the leadership table has also identified 10 areas of focus and 5 priorities, which it validated through a very recent consultation process that included in-person workshops. I think there were about 8 of those delivered across the province, and an online stakeholder survey. The leadership table is meeting on February 25th, when it will consider the results of the consultations and define next steps. So identified priorities through these consultations include built and natural environments, comprehensive school health, early years, primary care settings, and Aboriginal First Nations. So as we see, there's a little poll coming up. So maybe, Brenda, you can put it on the screen or return it to the screen. And this is where we want to see what you would consider a top priority. Which of these 5 do you deem to be the most important?
My apologies, but I think that we're going to have a technical glitch on that one.
Okay, so we'll move on to the next, which is the important considerations for increasing physical activity levels. So there, I'd like to know from you where you would suggest we invest. There's 5 considerations: demographic changes, rate of urbanization, challenges in public health, growing economic inequality, and social challenges. What requires, in your opinion, our immediate attention and investment? Okay, social challenges, participation in recreation is top of mind. Very interesting. Thank you very much for sharing those results with us. So I'm going to speak a little bit about each of those. So demographics, diversity, and dynamics undeniably have changed the landscape. The aging of the population means that many communities have a declining proportion of children and an increasing proportion of older adults. There's a growing presence of First Nations and Aboriginal communities in urban areas. And there's a growing, and many communities have gained significant populations of immigrants from countries where public recreation is not widely experienced or understood. And as the population shifts, so do the ways people recreate. Next slide, please. Growing threats to the natural environment, such as climate change, has made the role of environmental stewardship increasingly important to the recreation sector. 80% of Canadians now live in cities, and rapid urbanization means that people have less exposure to the healing power of nature. Recreation can enable people to connect with nature and to rethink infrastructure needs in support of physical activity in the outdoors. The most recent data released from Statistics Canada show that only 15%, that's 1/5, of Canadian adults get the recommended levels of 150 minutes of moderate to vigorous activity per week. And among children and youth, only 5% are meeting the Canadian Physical Activity Guidelines of 60 minutes each day. Canadian kids are spending almost 8 hours a day in front of television, video games, and computer screens. In addition, sport participation rates are in the decline by 28% over the past 20 years. So undeniably, modern lifestyles combined with changes in the social and physical environments that determine health have precipitated negative trends, including increases in chronic diseases, childhood obesity, and mental health concerns such as depression and teen suicide. While immigrant and visible minority populations face some of the worst effects of our growing economic inequality, this trend affects all Canadians. An increasing number of individuals and families are unable to afford recreation activities or physical activity opportunities. And we certainly learned from Noelle how vital it is for families in the MEND program to have access to free support. I think she's mentioned it at least 3 times in her presentations. Obviously, that's a key feature of that intervention. So rapid changes associated with increases in economic inequities, persistent unemployment, the economic downturn, new communication technologies, urban living, the migration of young people away from rural areas, and the loss of traditional supports have compounded feelings of isolation in many communities. Yet we have evidence that participation in recreation and physical activity can substantially alter the crime rate in neighborhoods, and it can also contribute to social cohesion. So here I'd like to offer some priorities for supporting physical activity. Active, healthy people in communities, equity and inclusiveness, and having people connected to nature. What we want are active, healthy people in supportive environments that make the healthy choices the easy choices. We want to promote the old-fashioned joy and fun of unstructured child's play. And we want to incorporate fundamental movement skills and activity programs for children and youth. Another priority is to increase inclusion and access to recreation for populations that face constraints to participation. As service providers, we must become less demand-driven and more focused on strategically serving those who are most in need. We must be inclusive in every way, actively developing in a manner that does not include or exclude those with barriers to participation, and creating new ways to engage marginalized and vulnerable populations. This very much aligns with the concept of proportionate universality, where actions are universal, but with a scale of intensity that is proportionate to the level of disadvantage. We must proactively encourage those who are not familiar with recreation services to build skills, well-being, and a sense of confidence and competence. It's not good enough to make opportunities available and passively hope that individuals will use them. And finally, I'd like to mention the priority and need for us to help British Columbians to reconnect to nature. We live in supernatural BC, yet her physical activity rates belie our natural environment. So let's ensure that our communities are walkable, safe, and livable, that they offer parks, trails, and landscape areas to maximize opportunities for active living and exposure to nature. And let's do this in a way that minimizes negative impacts on climate, air, water and soil quality, and biodiversity. There we are, the busy little bees. There's a lot of information here, but then there's a lot happening. And our challenge for the future is to ensure that the various policies and strategies align and converge so that together we maximize our efforts and outcomes. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Suzanne. Was there an audio file? No. That was a great presentation, and really appreciate your emphasis within the policy framework on the equality issues and the social challenges. That's so important that is spread right throughout the whole, all the facets of creating a healthier BC. Certainly BCRPA is a strong voice for health promotion and has really worked in the past and continues to work to help make healthy choices easier for all British Columbians. So now I'd like to ask for questions for Suzanne. And Suzanne, when you talked about the leadership table, which is involved with the development of the physical activity strategy, are the health authorities represented on that leadership table?
Yes, they are. And there's representation from the education sector, from academia, from sport, obviously from recreation, and from various provincial ministries.
Here, Andrew, he has quite a long question here, so let me just suggest maybe we could look to help adults get active by making coaching clinics free so they would get out and get active with kids, then both win more active adults and more opportunities for kids. Also, there's a Canada-wide philosophy that adult fees should be 100% recovery rate when setting fees, but subsidize kid fees. Actually, then you lose adults getting active and you lose potential volunteers and coaches, which leads to less adults helping kids stay active. So maybe a tax break for businesses who allow employees to volunteer after school at healthy active programs, and even 2 hours a week would help all kids in all communities.
Well, that's quite an involved question.
Right, it is.
Let me address some of the pieces here. That's very much a question for the sports sector. They're the ones who train and provide the coaches. All provincial sport organizations have signed on the Canadian Sport for Life model and support the notion of teaching our children fundamental movement skills. That's where we should be instead of guiding them into specific sports too early on when they're not physically ready. So we should make sure that they have all of the basic skills, and then you determine where their interests and abilities lie. Having said this, what we do know is that often it's not enough just to know, for adults, to know the skills. They're not necessarily born teachers or coaches. And in fact, what we recommend strongly at BCRPA is that those who work directly with children undergo certain training like High Five, which is a quality assurance program for those involved with children 6 to 12 years old. And the point of this is to make sure that those adults who work directly with children know well the fundamental areas of healthy child development. and that they're able to create with children their first, most positive experience in recreation or physical activity. I think that is key for developing individuals who will adopt lifelong interest and participation in physical activity and in sports. Now, to the issue of prices and departments having to recover all of their costs through membership fees and registration fees, actually that is not correct. All municipalities, to a lesser or greater extent, subsidize access for those individuals in their community who need it. MEND, in fact, is a case in point, whereas for MEND, the provincial government is providing the supports for the program itself. You will have heard Noelle mention that the families participating have free access to all of the recreation facilities and programming in their community for 3 months beyond the program. That's a subsidy by the local government. And personally, I've always been a proponent of the idea of having free access to recreation, period, because there are many other services. Actually, most of the municipal services are covered by municipal taxes, and why is it so different for recreation? So that's a point of view, obviously, that local governments don't share, but they are very interested in improving the health outcomes of their residents and are increasingly providing free opportunities. And that's the point to one of the points I made in my presentation, and it is that although we want to have provide universal access, we also need to do more for those individuals that are in particular need.
Great. We'll just have one more question at this point, Suzanne, and Glenda was wondering whether what's happening at UBCM and the business level to inform and educate these sectors about the topics that you talked about.
So if the question is how are elected officials and local governments aware of this?
Yes, to inform and educate them.
Okay. Well, I think UBCM is playing a key role through their health committee. Obviously, there's more that we can do, and certainly all recreation departments in this province are aware and support the notion that they have a responsibility in the delivery of public health. There's no question about that, and I was not that long ago looking at some strategic plans for the sector that date back to 35 years ago. And the same language was used then, it is used now in terms of recreation being a part of health promotion and healthy living.
Oh, that's great. Well, let me just come back now and summarize, and thank you, Suzanne, because we've now heard from Noelle about the MEND project, family, the healthier habits. We've heard from Temily and Sarah about how youth leaders are engaging to get more of their peers active and outside right across Canada. And of course from Suzanne about BCRPA and their participation in the physical activity strategy and some of the policy levers that can support physical activity and healthy living in BC. So we've moved from the sort of the micro to the macro level of supporting physical activity and considered some of the activities needed to get BC families moving more. So we have one more question for everyone on the line, and then we'll open up the floor for your questions. As many of you are active at a program, a policy, or individual level, we'd like your opinions. Tell us what you see as the top priorities for increasing physical activity in BC. So look at your chat box and just go ahead and write down what you think those priorities are. And we want to get that feedback from you. We'll give you a couple of minutes to do that. We're delighted. We've had almost 100 folks on this webinar. People have had to come and go a little bit, but that's just a great turnout, and we very much appreciate it. Oh, the question again, what do you see as the top priorities for promoting more physical activity for BC families? And we certainly heard a lot from all of our panelists today about that. We're seeing family activities, getting more volunteers, instructors, coaches per capita who are properly trained. Schools, the priority should be supporting parents with young children with low barrier access points, and that we're hearing about in Manville as well. Access and outreach for those who may be socially isolated, and certainly Suzanne talked about that. Focus on the early years and instilling physical activity as a lifestyle choice from the get-go. Incentives to get families more active. Early years funding for education and programs to promote healthy physical activity. An interesting one, the absence of backyards due to urbanization has decreased informal play. I agree with that one. Children just can't go outside and play whatever they want. We need to find ways to encourage meetups and environmental safety measures. Good point. Andrew's talking about the Steve Nash basketball program. Your coach, your child plays free. Some great suggestions and ideas there. Thank you very much. So now we have a few more minutes for just questions to any of our panelists now that you've heard from them all. If you'd like to go back and ask any of them some questions, so please let it go. And I think we had a few more that we hadn't actually got to as well. Oh, can't go back to those. So any other? In the meantime, I'll just share with you a few of the comments that people have made about priorities. Getting kids involved between the ages of 12 and 18 in active programs that interest them and feedback from these age groups. Encouraging daily physical education back in school. DPA, daily physical activity is fine but not enough and isn't always done in schools. We've certainly heard that as well at BC, at our Alliance. Ways to support families, in particular new immigrant populations, in healthy lifestyles and physical activity. Parents have to be involved. That's a good point as well. So some great comments. Okay, I'm going to come back, I think, either to Temily or Sarah. Are there opportunities for the Alliance to help support youth to attain funding for goals or projects?
Yeah, I can. Tammy, you can take that one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, that is actually something that is a big part of how we support our natural leaders, and because that is always an obstacle. People have a lot of great ideas and some great initiatives, but funding is always a big problem. So that's something as a core team that we're really working on right now is our grant writing and our figuring out where these funding sources which ones we can best utilize, and that is the support that we will be giving future natural leaders as well.
Great. And Suzanne, Samantha had wondered, when you say connect with nature, and perhaps Temily or Sarah could answer too, do you mean just like the natural ecology or just outdoors or both? And also wondering what was sort of measured in the statistics that you keep on that.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the beginning of the question?
Yeah. When we talk about, or some of our panelists have talked about the importance of connecting with nature.
Yes.
Do you mean just the natural sort of ecology or being outdoors or both?
Both. We know that they are, and I think there's one or two on Granville Island, on Vancouver Island, schools that provide outdoor classes.
Mm-hmm.
And actually there are some where the students spend their entire day outdoors regardless of weather. And the outcomes of this in terms of health and academic achievement and just pure joy are immense. We also are developing a resource called Healthy in Nature. In its a web portal, which will provide resources, best practices, and tons of information for, in particular, recreation programmers who want to develop outdoor programs or who want to bring the outdoor into their facilities. Appreciation of nature and natural environments is also part of that equation, and having kids recreate in unstructured playgrounds and not the plastic ones we have now or whatever they consist of, where we know that 98% of children don't even for the intent that's in the design. They're not sliding down the slides, for instance, but they're climbing it from the bottom or from underneath. And we know the benefits of having them in unstructured natural environments. So it's about ecology, it's about appreciating natural environments, but it's about having opportunities to recreate not just in indoor facilities, but outside as well.
Right, and I know for those programs on Vancouver Island, there are great lineups. They're so popular to get children into those outdoor education programs. And Temily or Sarah, I mean, you're very much involved with this issue as well. And is that sort of how you see it, that it's both connecting with nature, but also just being able to be outdoors when you physically recreate?
Yeah, I think so. I think nature can be anything, you know. It can be the tree outside your front yard, or it can be the old growth forest. So if there's any chance you can get to just to spend some time outside in an unstructured environment, then that's just wonderful. Yeah.
Great, good. Well, I think we have come to the end of our time, and it's been a very busy morning and a very instructive one. We got back from someone who said they thought this was the best web. So I would like to congratulate and thank all of our panelists, Noelle and Temily, Sarah and Suzanne, for sharing your work and your enthusiasm with us all today, and certainly for great work that you're doing on an ongoing basis. And thanks to everyone in the audience for your attention and thoughtfulness, your great questions. We're so glad you could join us today. We're going to be following up with a short survey. I hope you'll respond. It's certainly your feedback really helps us learn from these events what's working and what we can obviously do better next time. So we'll be continuing with our webinars. We hope you'll join us again. Thank you all, and enjoy the rest of the day.